Awesome. It's another day of technical explanation show, and I'm extra thankful today because we're shooting this right before Thanksgiving. It's not going to go live until after, but it's that time of the year, to be thankful, and I'm thankful that I get to talk to so many cool people. And today, I have Dan Kuhlmann on to talk wrestling. So how you doing, Dan?
I'm doing great, Bryce. How are you today?
Like I said, I'm just thankful. I'm grateful that we get to do this. I've got family coming in from out of town. Excited to see. It's just a good day,
It
right?
is good. It is a good day. Talking wrestling, and I got nine people. Actually, I'm hosting for Thanksgiving as well tomorrow.
Oh yeah, it's awesome. I started my day, had a junior high scrimmage, and then we had hydration for the high school. So I was starting it, and then I do work too. Then get to do this. So it's already been jam packed there. So for those who don't know, can you tell the fans and the listeners where you're calling from today?
Well, I'm a Cincinnati wrestling official, so I'm in the most southern part of the state, and actually, I'm probably 6 minutes away from 6 to 10 minutes away from Indiana, depending on the traffic.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah.
So
So I don't know if you've ever been to Harrison High School.
yes, yes,
So I'm like right there.
okay. We
Uh,
the OAC runs some districts out of there, I think.
yes, I think I'll be working that district this year. As a matter of
Oh,
fact.
really?
Yeah.
I might have to get that one on my calendar. All right, cool. So,
Yeah.
everyone knows this is the technical explanation. Well, not everyone, but people that listen to technical explanation show. And what we do here is we tell wrestling officials stories and basically how much wrestling meant into their life and why they are still involved now after their competitive days have ended. So that's where I like to start. How did your wrestling story start? What's your earliest wrestling memories?
Well, my wrestling story took a different path. I thought I was going to be a basketball player growing up. Um, I did have wrestling in my family, so I'm one of five. I had three older brothers, two of which wrestled, one didn't. And then I also had a sister who was a tomboy, and I think she used to kick my butt because she was an older sister. But anyway, so I wanted to be different, wanted to be a basketball player. I liked tumbling, and this is back in the early 70s, right? So, I'm 56 years old, so I'm growing up in the 70s, and wrestling wasn't. I mean, it was big in our area in Cincinnati because we had some historical teams. Cincinnati Oak Hills is the area that I grew up in, which was a neighbor of Harrison, as we kind of talked earlier. But I played basketball, made the junior high team, but I never started. Sat the bench, so that was like one of the first times I'm very athletic, so I've always played multiple sports. And so when I made the junior high basketball team, I thought it was all great, but I never played. I was one of those guys, put them in the last 2 or 3 minutes, foul out in 2 or 3 minutes, and that was a rough season to get through. So then I finally decided, you know what, I guess I'll make that transition into wrestling. I had some older brothers that did it, and so I decided to do it, and instantly I had some success. Not that I didn't know what I was doing because, like I said, older brothers wrestling in the living room. I knew a little bit about it and felt comfortable on a mat because I was a tumbler. I could do flips and all that kind of stuff. And so getting on the mat wasn't that big of a deal for me. So into the eighth grade, I actually, back then there was very limited tournaments. You just dual meet it, right? So I had like a 10-4 record. Why I remember that? I remember that. And so I had a lot of success going into my freshman year, which was Bridgetown Junior High. I don't know if you ever heard of that, but it was a feeder school into Oak Hills, and did quite well my freshman year, and then of course got into high school wrestling at Oak Hills, which traditionally was a very tough school back in the 70s. They placed high in the state as a team, like in the 75, 6, 7, 8, was always on the Brakeman report as one of the top schools from the Cincinnati Southwest District. They usually had them ninth, 10th, somewhere in that range. And if you broke into that lineup as an underclassman, you were doing pretty well. Of course, I didn't break in my sophomore year, broke in my junior year. I started varsity my junior year and senior year, but never made it to state. Loved the sport though. I was a district qualifier, and just fell in love with the sport of wrestling, and it molded me who I was. And I wrestled for a coach by the name of Dick Roach. I don't know if you remember him.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, he passed away a few years ago. He was Oak Hill's coach for 25 years, and then he transitioned to become an official. And he always had his official's license, even when he coached. But once he retired from teaching and coaching, he got into officiating. And so he was like my what I called my ref daddy. We used to travel around, and as he was my varsity wrestling coach, and now we were working tournaments together and officiating, which was a very cool experience for me to really get to know a man who coached me for 3 years in high school, and now I got to travel with him, spend the night with him in rooms and stuff. So that was really kind of cool for me. But after that, I got into graduated from high school, got in down at UC, and they had dropped their program.
University of Cincinnati, right?
Yes, the
Okay.
University of Cincinnati. They had dropped their program, I think, in '82. So when I went down there in '83, there was a club, very unorganized, bunch of group of guys got together, and we used to wrestle in the meeting room up in the dorm at Calhoun. Unfortunately, we didn't have any type of sponsorship from any professor, so we just tried to winged it. And like all other things that are, trying to be ran by a bunch of 17, 18-year-olds, it kind of fell apart. So really my wrestling career from that point was kind of over from a competitive point of view. So I was in school, and then I saw that Hamilton Ross was looking for a JV coach. So I reached out to them as a 18, 19-year-old and interviewed, and they hired me on as their JV coach. This was 1984. And I did 3 years of JV coaching down at Hamilton Ross. And I'm sure you heard of Hamilton Ross.
Mhm.
They're a Division II powerhouse
Yeah.
in Southwest Ohio. And at the time, Rich Dunn, who's their current head coach, was coaching junior high there. So he's been there a long time. And he was working in a local company there. So he'd hold his practices in the evening. So we would finish up the JV and varsity practice. They would come in, and Rich and I would kind of mix it up. This is when we were obviously much younger. I think he was maybe 2 years older than me. He was 21 and I was 18, and we would roll around the mat and whatnot. But so I coached there for 3 years, had some success. And then my old high school coach called me up and said, "Hey, there's a spot open at Oak Hills, freshman coach. Would you be interested?" And at the time, the freshman wasn't at the high school, was still at Bridgetown. And I said, "Yeah, I'm definitely interested." So I moved from Hamilton Ross to my old high school, or junior high, and then I coached there up until, so I guess it was 89, 90, and 91. And when I coached there at Bridgetown, and I had some killer teams. I mean, some killer teams. We won everything. That's when tournaments start to grow a little bit. So we were in a lot of tournaments, and of course we had dual meets as well. But I had 3 very strong teams, and actually that senior class at '92 was a really good. I think they were city champs at Oak Hills. I had them as freshmen. By the time they were senior, they were city champs. I think we had 5 or 6 state qualifiers, 1 or 2 placers. So I felt pretty good about myself and grooming those kids my freshman year, and really teaching them the philosophy of Oak Hills wrestling. And it kind of transitioned really well once they got into the 10th, 11th, and 12th grade. So then by that time I was in '92, I was married, had a baby, finished school, and coaching just didn't fit into my life. So I had to make a decision, what am I going to do? And of course, as the head freshman coach, I was hiring officials, and they were always saying, "Hey, you need to officiate, come out and officiate." And I wavered back and forth, and I obviously did some officiating wrestle offs, a little bit. And, um, so, I got my big boy job, and it was like, what, if I want to stay in a sport of wrestling, I need to try officiating. And so in '92, I took up the class. And so here I am in 2021, 29 years later, as an official. and it's worked out really nice for me. I've had some success, done some big things, and got to stay in the sport of wrestling through officiating, and met a lot of cool people. It is a brotherhood. I mean, there is a brotherhood of coaches, and there's a brotherhood of officiating, and then there's an overarching brotherhood of wrestling, right? And you may have noticed that, but officials, we tend to we stick to each other and enjoy each other's company. And I can tell you, here in Cincinnati, we do a lot of stuff outside of officiating. We get together and just kind of hang out even during the off season and stuff. So it's something I look forward to every year when it comes around. I get to see my guys and go out and have fun and stay around the sport of wrestling. So that's pretty much how I got involved.
Yeah, and that's funny because yesterday we're filming a show, speaking with another official, and that's what he kind of said the same thing, kind of echoed your sentiment, but also talked about, and I've witnessed this just from running tournaments and back when I was official, back in the early 2000s. But a lot of people don't realize how much fun the officials have with each other in between when there's breaks or in the hospitality room.
And we have a ton of fun.
Yeah, and so here's my thought, and I don't know the answer. But the reason for the show is that we have an official shortage, right? And we also want to show our current officials more appreciation and respect and all the things that we should do. But the crux of it, the thing that motivated us at Ohio Mat Media to do this, is the shortage in officials. And so on some of my past shows, you'll hear me talking about officials having maybe a perceived adversarial role. But like, if there was a way to show, outside of doing podcasts and stuff like this, but to see officials like having fun before the tournament even starts, or in the, for young people to see, oh, it's not just old stuffy old men, from the eyes of a 17 or 18-year-old, right? Because when we were that age, that's how we viewed everyone that was even remotely older than us. So it's just, I don't know what it is. I got to think about it some more. It's only been 24 hours, but I think the more that you can show the human side to these coaches and to these athletes, it would make more coaches push their kids into officiating and more kids maybe consider it. So that's just my piece there. But I want to ask you another question. So 1992, you said that's when you got your license. Mm-hmm. Can you and are you familiar with the process now? It's classroom for the most part, maybe some Zoom. But can you talk to us about how different that process in 1992 would be to find out how to enroll in a class, get to class, communicate, all that stuff compared to today?
Well, it's publicized a little more now via the medium, right? The through the web, it's much more accessible, and to find out where the classes are held and what it all involves, how much does it cost, what is it you need. Back in 1992, it was, word of mouth. Oh, we meet at, Princeton Junior High School on a Monday night, just come up, right? Just come up and walk in this room. As, at the time, I can remember walking in a room as a 24, 25-year-old, and all these older men, right, that I've seen around. I knew I had some relationship with a couple of them who did my matches at Oak Hills, or when I, JV at Ross, and a few guys that come officiate, you'd make a good official. So for me personally, because I was a coach coming in, I had some relationships with current officials. So it made it easier for me to blend in and break through that click wall, if you will. Because at that time I'll be honest with you, it was a good old boy show.
Yeah.
It was hard to break in.
It stayed that way for a while, and there's still, I think, a little bit of that some places.
There are, and not to jump ahead, and I will tell you that, I did 15 years of hard working hard, trying to get a name out there for myself, taking everything to get notice, so 25, I was 40 years old, right? 15 years later, and I got sectionals and districts all in those 15 years, but I wanted state, right? I wanted state, and I was good enough to be there, but I wasn't getting in because of the good old boys network. At that time, it was the same guys over and over and over. You might have one new official. Well, then in 2006, 2007, the OHSAA made a decision that, hey, you could only do 2 state tournaments in a row, and then you had to sit out, which then forced them to bring in like 6 or 8 or new officials a year, right? Until they needed to build up their stock of state experienced officials, because guys were retiring, getting older, shouldn't be in there any longer. They'd done their time. Well, when they made that change, that gave me the opportunity to get in. That was the best move there, because I was on the verge of being done, you know. And there were a lot of officials like me feeling that way. So kudos to the OHSAA. And I think a lot of that was Ray and Dick Lowenstein and Jim Vreeland saying, hey, they were in the mix, seeing the guys were getting older and guys weren't coming back, that they needed to build, right, their inventory officials to have experience. And that's what this whole new process has done. And it gave guys like myself opportunity to get into state, build that experience. And now here I am, I've done 8, maybe 9 state tournaments. And I feel, I walk in now, I'm not nervous, right? I'm at home. I feel good. And I love sharing my experience with those first year, second year officials coming into the state tournament and say, hey, it's all good. Just do your thing. Don't worry about it. What got you here is going to make you stand out in the tournament. So I love sharing my experiences with those first year state officials. I really enjoy that piece of it. But anyways, so getting back to me becoming an official in 1992, it was hard. I think it's much easier now because, like I said, you have the information readily available to how to step through the process. So we've done well in that aspects, right? And document what it takes. And it's a 10-week program, right? And you get a big old manual and you step through that process, and then you're trained by certified trainers through OHSAA. Back in 92, it wasn't that. You had a guy that said, I'll do it, and you had your book and you went through and you took your open book test and you took your closed book test, and there you go. Good luck to you. Yep. I hope you get some matches.
Well, I mean, that's exactly what you set that up perfectly for me. And we haven't talked about this, if anyone's wondering, but like back in 1992, you just said is a little tougher than it is right now.
Right.
Today,
yes.
Everything's readily accessible. We've made it pretty easy. We still can improve.
Yes.
The question then is, how the heck do we find ourselves where we find ourselves with the shortage when, you know what I mean? Like,
yes, I do know what you mean.
We've reduced so much friction in the process to become an official, yet we find ourselves with not enough. And we're in one of the most prolific wrestling states in the United States. And I think that's the question. That's the $1 million question. If someone can answer that, then
another thing that we've done well. Now in Cincinnati, for the longest time, we never had an assignment. Okay, so it was go out and scramble the best you could, knocking on doors, getting to know ADs or the head coaches, and saying, "Hey, give me an opportunity," and and if you got that opportunity to prove yourself, then the word of mouth would start. That's what back in the day. That's how it worked. And it really was a scramble to get matches. Now in the Cincinnati area, we have an assigner, and I believe you spoke to that assigner, and he does an excellent job on sharing the wealth, right? So folks don't get depressed or don't get frustrated that they're not getting the key matches or not getting big matches or not getting seen, so they can progress forward in their goal and meeting their goals of trying to get a districts, or sectionals or even a state tournament. So we've done well there, but for many years it was the good old boy system, who you knew, right? Did you get matches? I can't speak for, I know there's assignees throughout the state. I don't know if it's used consistently and fairly, if you will. But I can only speak for the Cincinnati South. We have improved in that aspect. Where we haven't improved is our recruiting, and that's why we're hurting. Because a lot of times you get in those ruts. You do the same things over every year and year, and the same guys come in. Oh, I'm going to do this tournament. I'm going to do this tournament, and if I get a dual meet, that's great. I'll do that as well. But the recruiting aspects of it has kind of fallen to the wayside, and it does take a special individual or special person to be it. Not everybody can be an official. You got to have the right characteristics, right? You got to have some thick skin. You got to be able to laugh at yourself, right? Because you're not going to be perfect. You can't beat yourself up over and over if you don't make the right call. You got to have that mentality of a relief pitcher. If you make that bad call, you can't forget about it, move on, because the next one's coming up, right? Mm-hmm. It does take some special characteristics of an individual to be an official, and I think one of the things that we do that may not be advantageous to grooming new officials, we throw them in the biddy program, and that's hard to officiate sometimes.
That's tougher than high school. I'll tell you that. You want to talk about spaghetti wrestling? Watch a biddy tournament, and I don't even know what that's called sometimes.
We should start our new officials at the junior high level, in my opinion. I mean, obviously it's a step up in quality from the kids in most cases, not always, but it's less hectic. You don't have coaches that don't know what they're doing on the mat.
Oh, and the parents are the worst in that level too. So now you're subjecting them to the toughest situation. You're actually, I never thought about that. You're throwing them for the same pay they would get to do another, probably, or maybe even less. We're throwing them into a stressful situation with stressors just surrounding the mats.
Yes. And I can remember my very first junior high match. My very first match was a junior high match. This is 1992. It's in an inner city junior high school, obviously, in a very old school. And you had the single mat. You had the chairs sitting around the mat. You had kids running the table. You had kids keeping score. The head coach of the home team was a fireman, inner city fireman, who would rush from the firehouse to get to the coach, the kids, which I thought was great. He's volunteering his time. And it was nuts. It was so loud and screaming, and you're dealing with kids trying to keep the score and running the old clock. And it was the old square clock, red on this side, green on this side,
Those are awesome.
Yeah. And I'm trying to manage that, ref the two kids out on the mat who didn't know what they're doing. You had locking hands, and in your mind, you're trying to remember all the rules. And who wants to do that? Right. I mean, I can remember coming up and telling my wife, I said, what am I, nuts? Why am I doing this? And the parents are screaming. But I love the sport enough. This is where it takes that special individual. I wanted to stay in the sport. I just kind of kept going through, and it got better, and it got easier for me. And I was able to manage the whole situation better. But I was 20, 24, 25. I was a former coach. So I had a little bit of experience on those situations, but could you imagine a 19, 20, 21, or even 18 going through something like that? Right.
I did it. Yeah. So my first match was a junior high one, and it was at my home school. So I was officiating against the school that I just wrestled for 4 years ago.
Yeah.
But so that might have been a little bit better situation, because no one came as a small school. But no, I mean, that's really good to think about. And I think the other thing you mentioned too is we've had minds that are open to making changes that are going to move the sport forward, and we continue to have those minds too. Right. And speaking with them, and I think it's just, we can't move fast enough sometimes. It's almost like, that should have been done, but yesterday, right? But I think we're doing the best that we can. But again, my big thing is pushing for video classes for officiating.
Yes.
You still need to do mechanics. I'm not going to argue that at all. But if 50% of the world for 2 years can leave their place of employment and never return, and the wheels of the world keep ticking, exactly. We can probably teach wrestling that way.
Some of the associations, the one in Columbus, I think Dayton's doing it too. They do those weekend classes. I think those are ideal, and they try to structure it or schedule it around a tournament like the autism.
Wrestle against autism. Yep.
Right.
We're going to actually do that this spring. We're going to have a special one along with Fred Feeney.
Right. So I'm working with obviously I'm working with Elliot. Elliot's my guy. I'm telling you, he's going to be the savior of our Southwest Officials Association. He's going to be the man, right? I'm grooming him. I'm bringing him up, and I'm helping him along, get to know people, because that young man has so much energy, so much charisma, loves the sport of wrestling. He's going to save our association, in my opinion. And I've been promoting that. But anyways, him and I are trying to put that weekend class together, and we're going to schedule around Spatola's
Oh,
tournament.
yeah, that just took
Right.
place a couple. Yeah, okay.
Right. So he has it every April. He
Yeah.
has that.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
after
Yes.
state tournament.
Yeah.
And so we want to do it. We could do it at the Mount, have the classes at the Mount, and then roll right into the Spatola tournament. Right. And that's depending on the level of official, right? You can't really ask a 16, 17-year-old to be reffing maybe college level kids. We'll have to work that out, right? Depending on the maturity of that individual, because that's, you're getting a lot of different levels of wrestling in that tournament.
Well, I think what you do is you talk with Spatola and just say, hey, would you be open to having a novice or a beginner's division, right? And then assigned your new, I mean, it'll still be a little bit better than Biddy wrestling, right? But it could be closer.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, going to that high of a level of a tournament, yeah, that does give you some logistic issues. But I think that's what more of that needs to be done, where you can get that done in, let's say, a weekend, get your mechanics out of the way, and then start earning money to pay off all the money you spent just to become an official, right? So, it's not that you go broke, but when you're 17 or 18 years old, a couple $100 is a lot different, right?
Right.
And so I think the other thing too is, and we've been talking about this at the Ohio Athletic Committee too, is just what are other things that we can do to defer some of those costs. In fact, the OAC last year paid for the entire Tiffin girls wrestling team to get their licenses. So,
oh wow,
yeah. So it was like one of the largest classes. So there's things that we can do. I think, like you said, that brotherhood, though, all of us, instead of just being under, there's the big wrestling brotherhood, coaches, fans, wrestlers, we all need to get together and realize, like, everyone needs to realize this is a problem. Like, this is a problem for you because now you might have to travel more and be away from your family, right? So it's a problem for coaches because they might have worse quality matches because they have worse, not experienced officials, right?
Right.
It's bad for girls because right now, mostly they're forced to wrestle on a Sunday, like an afterthought, because we need all the other officials to officiate on Fridays and Saturdays,
Yes.
And so it affects everyone. If you want to talk to the parents, well, now you have to give up your all weekend to go to sporting events if you have a boy and a girl wrestler. So it affects us all in different ways. And I think we just need to come together and kind of like a committee or something and just say, look, we gotta do this together.
And with the girls programs, exploding across the country, it's just going to need even more, right?
Yeah, and I read today, and it was on the internet, so I don't know if it's true or not, but someone had posted, we still might be 3 years out from sanctioning girls wrestling in Ohio, which
is behind some other states, correct?
Oh, tons.
Yeah.
I mean, Texas has had it since Title IX.
Right.
And I think it's mostly a monetary issue, but there's got to be a way to solve that. If it's just money, there's a way,
Right.
But you can't tell me, with the girls' state tournament now 2 years in a row, with some of the history that happened last year, even if it's not sanctioned, it's still going to grow, because I think these girls are kind of like, it's a challenge.
Taking it.
Right. Yeah, they're just like, how many of us does it take before it matters to you, and good for them. They should keep doing the work, but you're right. That's going to create other potential log jams. So I don't know. I always just think, coming together as a group of everyone and talking about, look, this is how it affects us all. What are we going to do?
Right.
Because that's how girls wrestling happened here in Ohio. Some like-minded people got together and said, how are we going to make this happen? And then look what happened 2 years later.
Right. Right.
So do you have any women officials down in the South?
No, we do not. Although, funny you should ask, I've been emailing a mom, if you will. She has a young daughter, or maybe it was a son. I cannot remember. That is in biddy wrestling, and she's going through the course through the Columbus Association, which I have no idea why. Now I'm assuming she lives in the northern part of Cincinnati, like I would say near the kind of the Mason up northern part, which would be closer to Dayton than it would be Columbus. I mean, I don't know why, but anyway, so I get an email from Dick Lowenstein and Jeff Simons saying, hey, we have a female official who's taking a class from the Columbus Association looking to get some mat time. And they knew I was helping out at the Oak Hills Biddy tournament that's coming up on December 4th. And can you give her some mat time? So I said, sure, I'll give her some mat time. So I emailed her and I said, hey, come on down to Oak Hills. You can work with me on my mat, And she goes, well, I think she said my son is wrestling at the Lakota East kids tournament the same day. And she goes, do you know who's running that? I said, unfortunately, I don't. I said, but here's what I recommend you do. Bring your gear with you, and as you walk in the door, you're going to be able to tell who's the tournament director or who's the head official, or just go up to the official. Say, hey, I'm taking the class. Can I work in? They'll be more than happy. They'll be more than happy to help you work in on the mat. And you still get to watch your child wrestle too. I'm sure there'll be no problem working that out. So that's the only one that I know of. And again, that individual's taking it from the Columbus Association. Mm-hmm. But we don't have any girls officials right now, other than that individual.
Again, it's tough because most people that are officials are either a past wrestler, a past coach, right? And if we haven't given women even the chance to compete,
right,
we probably haven't given them the chance. And I'm laughing because it's so ridiculous to me.
Right.
But if we haven't given them the chance to compete until 2 years ago, we probably haven't given very many the chance to coach either. So the only other pool that you have that is parents, right?
Yes.
And
yes.
And with today, I'm not a parent myself, but these kids are busy. I have a junior high team, and these parents are taking them from wrestling practice to swimming to all this other stuff. And so I don't know if time or the perception of availability of time is keeping some of these parents too, but I think that might be one thing but you bring up a good point. Like if you have a young kid, you could watch them grow in the sport and you grow in the sport with them. And by the time they're in junior high, if you start early enough, you could, probably never ref their match, and you shouldn't, but you could follow them, and or watch them compete in high school and then do biddy on Sunday. And now it won't be so stressful because you've got X amount of years, hopefully not 15 before they get to their goal. But yeah, I always want to talk about that because I think I want to keep that out in front of, I don't want to beat the drum and break it, but I want to keep that out in front of people because I see that as the biggest hurdle that we have coming our way. But let's pivot to something different. So you said you've done 8 to 10 Ohio?
I believe I've done 8 or 9. I'm not 100% sure. It's one of that number, 8 or 9. I done majority of them are the individual, and I done one team.
Okay.
And I know one team.
Okay.
Did not like the team state tournament.
Everyone says the individual.
From an official perspective, I think it's a great idea, but they work your butt off as an official. Oh, you work hard.
Yeah, at those tournament bracketed duels, because you're getting your matches getting done, and then they're putting the teams right over on your mat, right?
Right on. You got that, and you have the whole match. It's not like you have an assistant, but you're doing that whole duel.
Yeah, you're not going 2. You're not going 3 and sitting down and someone else.
No, you're doing that whole duel, and I got the semi duel when I was there, and it was a barn burner. I can remember it was Wasion, and it was a Chillicothe, and there was a girl on the Wasion who was really, really good.
They're gonna have a couple more because they're a junior high team.
Yeah.
But go ahead.
And that match came down to the heavyweight, and then it took that match took it out of me, dude. I'm telling you, that match, when I was done, and it was in St. John's. I had the sweat all over me, and I was at the table, 3. It's heated. It's from that perspective. from the competition in the dual meet, it was awesome, right? If I was a fan, loved it. As an official, you work hard, man, and you didn't get paid all that well either. And it's a long day.
That's probably something that really needs to be thought about because it is hard work. Like I helped out at a football tournament this weekend. It's kids football though. It wasn't high school, right? But I mean, these officials were on for 4 games, 8-minute quarters, with very little break. And I'm just like, so I mean, it's a lot standing up, moving, running down the field. People don't understand, you're working out there.
Right.
And with an important tournament like that, and is how many big matchups, they might want to look at how they can, maybe schedule more officials, and maybe you do only do, what I mean?
Right.
3 matches on, 3 off or something. I don't know. I would just want the best officiating at that level of competition.
Yes.
Because some teams view that as they know there's no way I'm going to ever beat, win the individual team title tournament.
Right.
But I have a dual team and I might be able to do that. So
that's unfortunate. It is unfortunate they dropped that tournament. And I think, again, this is just my opinion. I think, I'm not 100% sure. I don't have to check the facts, but I think they lost money on it.
Yeah, that's what it was.
Most years. Right.
Yeah.
And then when COVID came, it was an opportunity to say, well, we're not going to do it. And they just never, they may try to pick it back up, but they haven't done it by now. I doubt it.
It used to be sweet though, because what you would do is you travel and your first couple of rounds, they were a duel in someone's gym. And
right.
Then you only got in based on, I think, underclassmen that scored points at districts the year before. So it was awesome. But then it would be like 18s. And my school, we'd go to Springfield and Toledo. And I mean, back in the day in like the early 2000s, late 90s, we were wrestling against Delta and Chanel, and all these teams that were vying for the team title. And that was the only time you got to really see them other than tape and stuff. So that was another cool thing too. But tell us about why you loved individual tournaments so much.
Well, a couple reasons. One, it's 3 days, right? And you get ample amount of rest. And you're that brotherhood thing again, right? So I'm seeing the officials that all over the state that I only get opportunity to see when I'm there typically. And because I've done it, 7, 8 times, 9 times, that I've cultivated some relationships with guys from the Cleveland area, from the Toledo area, from the Columbus area, from the Southeast. So it's neat to meet back up. And the locker room antics, oh my, the locker room. I can remember my rookie year coming in. I think my first one was 2007 coming in, and I was, I was given advice: don't leave your locker unlocked. Right when you go in the shower, always lock your locker, because if you come out, your clothes and shoes will be hanging in the rafters, and this and that, and just those type of fraternity-like antics, right? And then just cutting up and having fun and just enjoying the time. And then of course the wrestling is great. I mean, it's very exciting, right? Not so much the first round, but once you get past that Thursday into Friday morning, and the quarters and the semis Friday night. And if you're lucky enough to get the Division I semis, and you're right, you see it all right there in front of you. I mean, because sometimes the finals are anticlimactic. The most exciting part is the semis, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so just talking about it gives me the goosebumps. You know, I mean, and being from Cincinnati early on in the 2007s, when I can remember, I think it was 2008, I had the D1 semis, and many of the wrestlers were either from up north. So, and I was a Southwest guy. Well, I can't do this one. I guess I get to do it. So I was doing 2 and 3 in a row because we didn't have that many guys in the semis from the Southwest, mm-hmm. right? So that's how that kind of works. You're not supposed to officiate anybody from your district, right? Or if you've seen multiple times. So I was, I guess you could say fortunate enough. There was times where I did two in a row before I would get a break, 2 semis in a row, and they were tough battles, So yeah, it's just a good time, and it's fun work, and you get enough ample breaks because you got 3 on a mat, right? So you work one and you're off, you come in, you assist, and you work one. So unless you have to do the 2 or 3 in a row, because the guys that you're working with in the earlier rounds, that their wrestler, the competitors are from their district, and you have to work it.
Yeah, that seems like there's a lot there that I think people don't really understand. I don't think people really pay much attention to who's because unless you're really close, you can't really even tell, right? Because it's a big gymnasium. Right. But that's interesting to me because one of the things one of my theories, and it's a theory, it's not proven at all, is that when we get down to the state, we being St. Mary's, my dad was a coach for a long time. We always had trouble at state in the first couple of rounds. And now it sounds like we might have been having Southern officials who you guys wrestle differently in the South than in the North.
Yeah.
It's night and day. We are take them down, or take them down, cut them, take them down, cut them up in the North. That's what we like to do, points, and you guys give a little bit more time to ride, especially the person on top, to work a power half or to work a turn, where we don't even it might have changed now. I don't, but we wouldn't even try it because we get banged for stalling if you try it during the regular season. So it's like, that's something. Go ahead.
You bring that point up, and that is something that, as the OWOA, right, Ohio Wrestling Officials Association, which is run by, Jim Vreeland and Ray Anthony and Dick Lowenstein and Toby, right? They really try to do a good job to try to take that inconsistency around stalling and try to mold it into a consistent effort, how we all call it.
I think the new rules help with that too, a little bit.
It does. And it's difficult to do, right? Because we all have our own interpretation. Most of us officials are former wrestlers, and we stalled in our own way. And we grew up one way as stalling ourselves and seeing how stalling is. You kind of apply that to your officiating. And what I've tried to do in my years in time, right, of working in the state tournament, when I get in a team of 3, right, and I don't know the official, I don't know how they officiate, and it's funny, but as we start off that first round, I would say by the end of the first round into the second round, it's kind of like we've kind of find our sweet spot on stalling, right? You see how he calls it, you see how he calls it, and you try to find that middle where the one guy isn't the only guy calling it, right? Oh yeah, you just kind of, as a team, you kind of filter together, and stalling becomes, consistent among that team. Now it may be a little different than the other teams, but you work together to try to find that happy medium.
Is that just through observation, or is that communicated?
No, that's through my observation.
That's your lens. That's what.
Yes,
what you
through
see.
my lens and my experience. And I work hard at trying to, if I'm captain of the team, I'm usually telling my officials, hey, let's keep an eye on this. Let's watch this for stalling. If you see guys on the bottom, obviously putting their heads down and not working, those are the things that we need to, come together and make sure we're calling that guy for stalling at the top guy or something like that. And not forcing my philosophy, but just something to think about as we work together as a single unit to call stalling very consistent on that mat.
Yeah. That's a good plan. Right? You want to be on the same, want to be on the same page.
Exactly.
Because if they're looking at something completely different than you, right, it can make you look bad. You could be that one person that's out, right? Those two could be having their lens and saying, I'm synced up with this guy. This guy's just whatever.
Yeah.
So,
and by the third day, typically that group of officials that you've worked with now for 3 days have become a pretty good unit, right? We know how each other operate. We know what they like. If they like to catch on out of bounds, or they want your assistant to catch. I always tell I'm one that doesn't like to catch. I said, you're my catcher. I'm watching the out of bounds, right? But there are officials who like to catch. That's their comfort level, and they're going to call and still officiate by catching as well. But yeah, those type of things you just learn about your official that you're working with for 3 days, and you become a pretty well-oiled machine by that third day.
Awesome. So that's, again, there's a lot of stuff that no one, I mean, I haven't even talked about this stuff too. So it's good just to see the insights of how things behind the curtain, I'm going to say, kind of work. Because as a coach
Yes.
too, it's really good to have this understanding, right? Like going through the officials class, and it wasn't my first time, but now I know, okay, this is what they had to do. Like this was the first barrier. And then, talking with people like Matt Sorochinsky and other people like, okay, 3 months out, they start working out so they can be a D1 college, you know what I mean? Or they're watching
Right.
film study, or a questionable call happened yesterday and it's all over social media. I'm seeing it. I tweet some official and say, hey, have you seen this? And they're like, yeah, 10 a.m. this morning, 5 of us are already talking about it. That's
Right.
the stuff that you don't see. And it's like, you don't do that because you want the $150 paycheck on Saturday. You know what I mean? You do
Yes.
that because you want to be the best that you can, because you believe that those kids and those coaches deserve the best that they can. And that's
Exactly.
the only way that competition is possible. So with that, and we're getting close on the hour mark here, and I want to be good with a good steward of your time. Going into the season, all right, some people are just starting hydration today. What are some of the things that, as an official who's been, you've done the highest tournament in the state, what are some things that you think coaches and athletes should just be mindful of this year, whether it's rules or behavior, or any of the any of those things? What would you wish that more people were mindful of?
More people were mindful of. Let me think.
And again, that's a you didn't know that one, so take your time here. I mean,
Yeah. Well, I didn't officiate last year because of COVID, right? So they may be mindful of this by now, but that the stalling is now a separate line, right? It's not
accumulative. Yeah.
accumulative, right, with your technical violations, and that's something I'm keeping in my mind because I didn't get really to officiate with that new rule in place,
Yeah.
right? So
And then throw the new weight classes in there too.
and then throw the new weight, yeah,
You
it
see,
seems like
they make like ribs, like live strong bracelets with the new weight classes on them. You can like
I did see that.
it's pretty
I did see
sweet.
that. Yeah, yeah, yeah. One of these. Yeah,
Yeah,
right. I did see that, but I don't know how that would work though.
I
I mean,
don't
I've had the
either.
disc with the weight classes on it, and green, red, and whatnot, and you have two different discs depending on who has choice or not. But I don't know how they would do
And it's
the
just
wristband.
an old school pen mark right here, and then you just move it to the weight.
Right.
But you're
You know what?
talking
The other
even
big thing is the weigh-ins coming in. I think they changed some of the small little weigh-in requirements about, I think last year, or the
socks
year,
and stuff.
yeah, the sock situation,
You can wear
right?
any
So
socks you want now, so you can
any
be a
socks you want,
goofball. But
right?
if you
But
have them,
if you step on the scale with them, or you don't, you have to keep them on. And then the skin check, right? The skin check now, you skin check with your uniform
which is
and whatnot,
good. I mean, it is what it is, right? We don't
right?
have enough um, certified and licensed, females to do the skin checks with the females like we used to. So this
Right.
is a great way to allow for the sport to happen. I do, I'm not a doctor. I just stayed at a Holiday Inn last night, but does give me a little worry about, some of the funk still, because your singlet
Yes.
doesn't stay in one place, So if you've got impetigo right under your right strap, there's a good
Right.
chance it's getting on the mat or a person. Um,
Right.
but nothing's perfect. You know,
No.
my if someone were asking me that, my hope for people to be mindful is just to remember how fortunate they felt last year during COVID when they
Yeah.
got to go to a wrestling tournaments. Because I can tell you, we ran less tournaments last year for the OAC, but at least 10, and people were completely different. Just not as many angry fans. Just appreciating the fact that even though it's 2 spectators per kid, at least they could be in the room where their kids, just remember that, and don't, forget that
Right.
we're fortunate, to even have the sport. So,
Right.
but hey, man, I really appreciate you being on the show, especially it's day before Thanksgiving. I know you've got a turkey to prepare. I've got to go,
Yeah.
hopefully not butcher my stuffing. So we'll see. My homemade
Yeah, I
stuffing.
do the homemade stuffing as well. I
Okay.
was just telling my wife I'm going to have to make this. I want to make the stuffing tonight and go from there.
That's me too. I wanted to soak up the flavor overnight. So good call. Are you
Yeah.
baking or frying or
No, I do everything on the stove top. I mean, as
okay.
far as the
The
turkey
turkey.
itself, it'll go in the oven.
Okay.
I don't do deep fry it.
Yeah,
No,
I haven't either because the YouTube videos scare me. I think I'm smart enough to
not to do a
thaw a
frozen one and blow
turkey
up.
and
Ooh.
yeah, but you know what they say about assumptions. So,
Yeah,
um,
exactly.
hey, we'll stay on. We'll chat after, and I appreciate your time.
All right, Bryce, it's been a pleasure.